The Supergirl trailer didn't just get criticized, it got openly mocked, and within hours, the DC reboot was back in freefall. Clips were torn apart, jokes flooded social media, and fans immediately pointed to one name that wasn't even in the footage: Henry Cavill. What started as a light criticism quickly turned into full-scale ridicule. As the mockery spread, attention shifted fast. This wasn't just about Supergirl anymore. It became a referendum on James Gunn's vision, with fans accusing DC of recycling the same tired ideas while presenting it as a bold new era. Every comparison to past failures made the backlash feel heavier. Cavill never said a word, but his silence spoke louder than any statement. To many fans, this moment felt like confirmation that DC pushed out the wrong face and replaced it with a direction that nobody asked for. His absence suddenly felt more noticeable than the new footage itself. And once that narrative took hold, the trailer stopped being the story. The real story became how quickly DC lost control of the reboot, again, and how little room for error the studio now has going forward. The Supergirl trailer was meant to signal momentum, but instead it became instant fuel for mockery. Within minutes of dropping, fans clipped scenes out of context and reshared them with sarcastic captions and looping edits. What should have built hype quickly turned into easy content for jokes. Viewers zeroed in on the tone first. Many said it felt oddly flat, unsure whether it wanted to be playful or serious. That lack of clarity made the trailer easy to ridicule, especially for a fanbase already skeptical about DC's direction and long-term plan. Visual choices didn't help either. Certain shots were compared to past DC misfires, with fans saying they'd seen this style before. Instead of feeling new or exciting, the footage reminded people why they lost faith in earlier reboots. By the end of the first day, the narrative was locked in. The trailer wasn't being debated or defended, it was being laughed at. And once mockery replaces discussion, regaining control of the conversation becomes nearly impossible. The mockery didn't stay contained to a handful of comments. It spread fast because fans were already on edge before the trailer even dropped. Many went in hoping to see clear proof that DC had finally learned from past mistakes, so disappointment turned into frustration almost immediately. Social media accelerated everything. Jokes and sarcastic edits traveled faster than thoughtful takes, and once the tone shifted in that direction, serious discussion never really stood a chance. Each repost amplified the sense that the backlash was universal. That speed mattered. The faster the reaction moved, the less time DC had to respond or manage expectations. By the time the studio could even assess what was happening, the narrative had already taken shape. What began as criticism turned into collective rejection. And once fans emotionally check out, winning back trust becomes a much steeper climb. Almost immediately, the conversation stopped being about Supergirl alone. Henry Cavill's name began trending alongside the trailer, even though he wasn't involved in the project at all. For many fans, his departure from DC never fully healed, and the backlash reopened that frustration overnight. Comments quickly framed the trailer as evidence that DC removed the wrong figure at the wrong time. Cavill became a symbol of wasted potential, someone fans believed could have anchored the reboot if his return had been handled with clarity and commitment. The comparison felt inevitable, especially as disappointment spread. Old interviews and past statements resurfaced and were pulled directly into the current backlash. Lines that once seemed neutral were now treated as warnings that went ignored. Fans didn't need Cavill to speak. They filled in the gaps themselves, turning his silence into a message they felt confirmed their doubts. At that point, Supergirl became secondary in the conversation. The trailer had reopened a wound DC believed was already closed, reminding fans that unresolved exits don't disappear. They resurface when confidence slips. As the backlash grew, attention shifted upward. James Gunn quickly became the focal point of criticism, with fans accusing him of recycling familiar creative patterns under a new label. The promise of a fresh start began to feel hollow. Many argued the humor and pacing felt familiar in the wrong way. Instead of redefining DC's tone, the trailer was seen as blending into a formula fans were already tired of. That perception spread fast. Supergirl herself faded into the background as leadership absorbed the pressure. The conversation stopped being about one trailer and became about trust in the vision guiding the reboot. Once that shift happened, the stakes changed. This wasn't about fixing a single trailer anymore. It was about whether fans still believed in DC's direction at all. Once the mockery settled in, a single phrase began to dominate the conversation across platforms. Fans labeled the trailer as recycled, arguing it felt stitched together from ideas they had already rejected years ago. The more that label spread, the harder it became to challenge or soften. Edited clips started highlighting familiar beats and predictable moments. Comparisons flooded timelines, framing Supergirl as another example of DC repeating patterns instead of breaking them. What could have been dismissed as exaggeration quickly hardened into something that felt widely accepted. At that point, nuance almost completely disappeared. The trailer wasn't being judged on its own merits anymore. It was being used as evidence in a much larger argument about DC's creative exhaustion and failure to evolve with its audience. And when a project becomes symbolic, it stops being allowed to fail quietly. Every flaw feels magnified, and every defense sounds like denial rather than explanation. As the narrative took over, DC remained quiet. There was no strong defense of the trailer, no clear statement about the creative direction, and no visible effort to reset expectations or reassure fans. That absence was noticed immediately and dissected online. Fans interpreted the silence as uncertainty and hesitation. If the studio truly believed in what it released, many asked, why wasn't it standing behind it? Each hour without clarity allowed criticism to sink deeper and feel more justified. Influencers and reaction channels quickly filled the gap left by leadership. Their takes shaped the conversation, often in harsher and more dismissive terms than any official response would have used. Those voices gained control of the framing. By the time DC could have stepped in, the tone was already locked. Silence didn't calm things down. It confirmed doubts that were already taking root. Every reboot gets a window of patience from fans, a brief stretch where uncertainty is tolerated in exchange for long-term promise. With this backlash, that window slammed shut far faster than expected. Viewers made it clear that goodwill was gone, and explanations alone would no longer be enough to calm concerns. Future projects were instantly pulled into the conversation, even ones with no direct connection to Supergirl. If this was the tone and execution fans were seeing now, many wondered what that said about everything else coming next. Skepticism replaced anticipation almost overnight, and excitement was replaced by caution. James Gunn's margin for error shrank rapidly under that pressure. Every creative choice would now be judged through the lens of this backlash, whether it was fair or not. Even small missteps suddenly carried heavy consequences, amplified by doubt. By this point, Supergirl wasn't just carrying its own weight as a single release, it was carrying the credibility of the entire DC reboot, with trust now the most fragile and valuable element of all. As the backlash faded from loud mockery into lingering frustration, Henry Cavill's absence became impossible for many fans to ignore. He didn't react publicly, didn't post, and didn't comment. Yet his presence was felt everywhere in the discussion, simply through comparison. Old clips of Cavill resurfaced across platforms, often edited side by side with moments from the Supergirl trailer. The contrast was intentional. Fans framed Cavill's era as more grounded and focused, even with its flaws, while the new direction was portrayed as uncertain and scattered. These comparisons weren't driven by insiders or studio narratives. They came directly from the audience. And when fans begin rewriting history in real time, it signals a deeper emotional disconnect from the present direction. Supergirl wasn't just being judged as a new character introduction, she was being measured against what fans believed DC willingly walked away from, and that shadow followed every conversation about the reboot. With the initial noise settling, the larger issue became impossible to avoid. This was no longer about a mock trailer or a few viral jokes. It was about trust between DC and its audience, something already fragile long before the trailer dropped. Fans began questioning whether leadership truly understood what they wanted from the brand. Every delay, every vague explanation, and every moment of silence reinforced the idea that the reboot lacked a confident and unified direction. Expectations quietly dropped across the fandom. Not because fans stopped caring, but because they stopped believing promises about a fresh start. That emotional shift is far more damaging than open outrage. Once trust erodes, rebuilding it takes more than statements or marketing. It requires consistency, clarity, and time. All things DC now finds itself running short on. The Supergirl trailer backlash revealed far more than a simple creative stumble or marketing misfire. It exposed just how fragile DC's reboot still is, even under new leadership that promised clarity and stability. One mocked release was enough to reopen old wounds and reignite frustrations that never truly disappeared. Henry Cavill's name resurfaced not simply because of nostalgia, but because many fans viewed his exit as the moment long-term stability vanished. James Gunn became the focal point of expectations that suddenly felt unmet, while Supergirl carried the weight of a controversy she had no role in creating. DC now faces a challenge far bigger than fixing a single film or repairing one trailer rollout. it must rebuild trust, while proving this reboot represents real change, not another reset in name only. Because once belief fades, momentum collapses fast, and recovering from that takes far more than a new release or a louder promise to do better.